Good afternoon, my friends. This is Paul, and today I'm going to be reviewing to you Kirby's Return to Dreamland Deluxe. As the name suggests, this is a remake of Kirby's Return to Dreamland for the Wii, which I just reviewed a couple of months ago. So if you want to know what the basic gist of the game is, I suggest that you watch that review first. The link will be in the description if you haven't seen it. So this review will be primarily focusing on the changes made to the Switch version and if it's worth double dipping. One of the first and most obvious changes occurs right when you boot up the game, and that's that it's had a little bit of a graphical overhaul. Now, this is to be expected. Most games that get ported from older consoles have to have the graphics boosted so that it's up to modern standards. But it's a little bit more divisive in this game, as the characters feel more cartoony and have a weird black outline around them as though you're playing Super Smash Bros. For 3DS. I'm not crazy about this change. I especially don't like the fact that they redesigned King Dedede so that he looks more like he did in Kirby 64, but it could be a lot worse. Another thing that kind of baffles me is that now the bottomless pits have this weird black texture on them that looks very unfinished, as though it was tacked on. It does not look natural at all. I think that's to differentiate if players have bad depth perception, if they're going to fall into a death trap, though there is a way of offsetting that once we get into it later. Thankfully, the rest of the graphics look really great. Kirby's Return to Dreamland was already a pretty good looking game by Wii standards, and the boost to HD just makes the backgrounds pop even more, and it feels ever so slightly closer to the standards started in Kirby Star Allies. There's a new easy mode, as if the game really needs it, where you can turn on Helper Magolor mode, where Magolor will fly you out of pits if you ever fall down. He will also double your health bar, and every time you beat that stupid goal game that they still kept in, he gives you some extra food, and if you get all the way to the top, then you get a maximum tomato, which refills your health entirely. So it's pretty much impossible to lose a life unless if you get crushed. For some reason, lives are still in the game too, but there is a mode that gets rid of them, but again, we'll get into that a little bit later. There are 2 new copy abilities, and as a result, 2 new enemies that you can inhale to get the copy abilities. And those abilities are Sand and Mecha. Sand is pretty self-explanatory. Kirby just attacks with a bunch of sandy attacks. One cool thing about this move is that when Kirby tries to use his shield, instead of just holding up a defensive stance, he just turns into a pile of sand. It's really cute, but you can't dodge roll. Before I get into the mecha, that reminds me, Kirby can now dodge roll. In Return to Dreamland on the Wii, you could only stand in place and guard because your hand would have to move awkwardly because the game refused to let you use a nunchuck. But now you can not only dodge out of the way, but even air dodge. Getting back to the new copy ability, the mecha suit more or less turns the game into Kirby Planet Robobot for a little bit. It lets Kirby fire lasers, shoot bombs downward, and most importantly, hover by holding down the jump button instead of rapidly tapping it to make Kirby slowly fly over everything. So it definitely makes traversal much faster, and it feels like a truly life-changing power-up. Another small but welcome change is that the game lets you use traditional controls the entire time. I know this sounds like a no-brainer, but in the Wii version, not only could you not use the nunchuck, but sometimes the game shoehorned in motion controls because it's a Wii game, we gotta do it. Now, certain actions that required you to shake the Wii Remote just let you use buttons and stick rotations. If you get swallowed by those eel enemies underwater, you can just rotate the stick to get out. All of the super abilities have been reworked so that you can either press the Y button for the snowball ability, or rotate the control stick to get a bigger hammer for the Grand Hammer. Now that I think about it, that's a pun on Grand Slammer. I literally just thought of this as I was recording. So that's nice. A couple of the mini games use motion controls, which segues nicely into one of the biggest new changes is that there's a new mode called Merry Magoland. Not only can you access this from the menu after you get past level 3, but you can also access it anytime you're on the world map by simply pressing X. This lets you explore a whole new hub world in 3D on the Warp Star. Not as cool as running around in 3D in Forgotten Land, but still, it's nice to have a 3D section in a 2D side-scrolling Kirby game. And there, you can play a whole bunch of mini games, most of which are brand new to Return to Dreamland, and a lot of them are also returning from previous Kirby games. I especially love the return of Checkerboard Chase from Kirby 64, as that minigame was more fun than the entirety of that game, and the characters will even hold up what position they got in the minigame just like they did in Kirby 64. And I think the music is even remixed so that it was what it was like in the original game. However, if it were just the sub-games here in Merry Magoland, I would probably find it pretty lackluster. But there's a whole new music track that's a more triumphant version of the Lore Starcutter theme, and you can also have stamp rallies, where if you do certain achievements within the game, some of the achievements are as easy as just playing the sub-games enough, then every certain number of stamps you get a reward. These rewards come in two forms, either souvenir items or dress-up masks, and you can go to the vendor in the plaza to arrange these items. The masks are pretty self-explanatory. They let Kirby wear a mask. Thankfully, after you've had a mask equipped, you can press in on the right stick to take it on and off whenever you want in a level, just in case they're too annoying. They're based on several of Kirby's friends and foes from throughout the series. I haven't gotten them all. I really hope eventually there's an Elfalin mask, because I love callbacks to Forgotten Land. But it is nice that you can actually dress up. Speaking of which, not everyone has to play as different characters in the multiplayer. In the original Return to Dreamland, player 1 would be Kirby, and then players 2 through 3 would have to choose between Meta Knight, King Dedede, and Waddle Dee. You can still do that, but now all 4 players can play as Kirby. Swinging back around to Merry Magoland, you also get souvenir items, which essentially work as the carryouts in Forgotten Land, where you can assign an item to the X button, and then when you're in mid-level, you can use it whenever you want. I only ended up using one, which was a food item, but you can also get a random copy ability or one of the power-up items. Just in case you're not the biggest fan of achievement hunting, there are also ways to offset this within the main levels in story mode, as sometimes you can find tickets lying around, and you can exchange those tickets for automatic stamps. Whether the tickets actually respawn or not, I'm not entirely sure, but it is nice if you're not the type of person that particularly cares that the Switch doesn't have a built-in achievement mode. As you progress through the game, you'll also get more attractions to come to Merry Magoland in the form of the bosses deciding, hey, let's put aside our differences and be friends, and just hanging around. Eventually, Magolor's ship, the Lore Starcutter, will just be there. Unfortunately, you can't really do anything with these new guests, but you do at least get new masks based on those bosses as they appear. So some masks just appear as you proceed through the game, and that's a nice touch. Now, any of you who have seen the Nintendo Direct know that the biggest new feature in Return to Dreamland Deluxe is an entirely new mode. I am not going to spoil what that mode is, just in case you haven't seen the Direct, or if you haven't played the original Return to Dreamland, but let's just say that it takes on a slightly new gameplay style where your focus is on combat and trying to score as many combos as possible with the enemies in the area, and slowly upgrading yourself so that your abilities progress. Scenically, it's kind of bland. It doesn't really have the amazing backdrops that the main story does, but on the other hand, it also helps you focus more on the combat, so I guess it's okay. It does serve for more action-packed level design as opposed to mostly platforming that the main story has, and it has a really incredible final boss. It ends on a bit of an abrupt cliffhanger, But if you 100% the game, then you get a super secret level. I haven't gotten to that point yet, but it's quite a while before the next game arrives on my Gamefly queue, so I might do that after this and then maybe write an addendum in the comments. Now, the big question on most of your minds is, should you double dip on Return to Dreamland Deluxe if you already have Kirby's Return to Dreamland? I personally think it depends on how much you like Return to Dreamland to begin with, as this new mode doesn't get unlocked until after you beat the main game, and it's a lot of fun, it's amazing, but is it worth slogging through the main game if you don't particularly like it? There are definitely a lot of quality of life improvements, but the level design itself is not really touched a whole lot, and in the original game, I complained that it was kind of basic by Kirby standards. You might disagree. Kirby fans tend to eat up pretty much anything, so if you like it, I think it might be worth sitting through again. Maybe not at the full $60. That's a little bit ridiculous that Nintendo loves overpricing their games. But if you get this on sale, I could see this as a worthy follow-up. If you've never played Return to Dreamland Deluxe, I think it'll all depend on how much you like Kirby, as if you're a diehard Kirby fan, you'll probably want to eat this up without even questioning it. But again, I do think you should wait for this to go on sale, because Nintendo doesn't deserve $60 just because it has achievements and a new mode. I don't know. Price is subjective. So with that, thank you very much for watching. Let me know down in the comments if I missed anything, if you have any questions, and what you think about the video. I'd like to thank my patrons Matthew Rakowski and Spoon Ghost for supporting me financially during this time. And until the next time, remember to keep the faith, stay epic, and God bless. Bye!